All right, friends, for our first demonstration, what we're going to be talking about today is both how to work an experiment, how to train your kids on how to do the experimental process, and the activity we have that's connected to that is also extremely topical in terms of COVID-19, and that is how to wash our hands, how viruses spread through the body or work inside the body, and how to avoid spreading those germs, viruses or bacteria to other people. So we'll start by talking about the experimental process. So when we look at, or we talk about science, we talk about the fact that science is a way of looking at and understanding the world around us. So when we do science, we're doing experiments, we're doing observations, and all those are then put together in terms of then analyzing or thinking about what we've learned, seen, collected the data for, and then coming up with conclusions, learning from basically how these processes work around the world. And of course, the process for doing science allows us to take a very complex situation and break it down into smaller pieces that are much more manageable. So if you ask scientists, how does life work? There's no one answer for that. That's far too complicated, it's far too complex and involved for us to understand all at one time. So we take a very small problem. So say, for instance, how do cells in the body create energy from sugar? Well, that's a process that we can look at in much more detail. We can do experiments on it using maybe different types of cells, looking at different types of sugars and whatnot that the body might need, how they break them down, and then look at the cellular processes inside to see, oh, that's how they do it. And then we learn from that. So we're taking little pieces of things, doing multiple experiments with them, multiple trials with them, collecting data, analyzing it, and then coming up with a conclusion based on that evidence. So today we're doing an experiment dealing with hand washing and how germs spread. So for all of these videos, we're trying to take a lot of information and condense it into a short video so that you can watch it and not go crazy. In this case, I'm not going to show you any particular full video clips that I would in the normal class. So I'm going to show you just a brief bit and then summarize it for you. I just want you to know that the video is there and you can use it in the classroom to help you get the points across to your kids. So there's two videos we're looking at today. One is from NPR, and it's a medical illustration video on how viruses spread. And again, I'm just going to show you a piece of this. Sound, that's okay. So this is a virus coming into the cells, and one of the things they're trying to get to the kids is, especially with COVID, for instance, that the little pieces of things on the outside of the virus are keys, literally keys to get inside the cell. The virus gets inside the cell treats it as an honored guest, brings it in, and then lets it do what it wants, which means it hijacks the cell and starts to get the cell to take over and create more versions of itself. So it's just a short video on that. Even though it's highly detailed graphically, there's not a lot of content. They don't get into too much jargon or vocabulary on there, so it's well positioned for a fifth grade class. In any case, so this kind of gives you a quick overview for how cells get invaded by viruses and what we can do about that. In terms of changing that behavior, we want to talk about how to not spread viruses, and this is a somewhat humorous video on called "Why Don't We Do It in Our Sleeves," and it's mostly for training hospital staff on how to cough or sneeze into their sleeve as opposed to into their hand. Clearly not a very detailed movie in terms of specifics graphics, but it does do a good bit of information, and for the fifth grade audience, it is written to be humorous. So you have people who are sneezing into their hands. Later on in the video, sneezing into their arms. Later on in the video, you have actual tests, and we have judges who come in, and they'll actually evaluate whether people are appropriately sneezing or coughing into their hands. So, for instance, this person just coughed into her hand, but because her other hand was close to it, she's contaminating herself So she gets points down for that. So it's kind of fun for the kids to look at, but it does do a good job of trying to explain, no, you really need to cough or sneeze into your sleeve. Now, the experimental process comes about when we show the kids, this is what happens. These are the things you can't see. Since you can't see germs and bacteria, we need to find out how well we are washing our hands. And since everyone's been talking about washing hands, you would think that a lot of people would be doing it right. We know through studies that most people don't do hand washing right. The average for most adults is about 7 seconds, and that's very questionable. Well, most people use soap. So we want to be able to teach our kids how to do it properly. So we're going to use something called Glow Germ, or this one's called Glitter Bug Potion, and it's basically just a lotion that it's just a white lotion, and it goes on, and after a few seconds, got moisturize. It's all about moisturization. Under a blue light, a black light, sorry, your hands will glow. Now, you need to explain to the kids, hey, this is not germs, this is just showing how germs might be on your hands. But there they are. Now, then the experiment, thank you, Stacey. The experiment is about how to wash your hands. So then you would break the kids into small groups. And once you've got the kids in small groups, each group is going to be doing a different type of hand washing activity, and then you can judge them at the end. So for instance, one group might just use a paper towel. And so they wipe their hands with a paper towel, and then until they feel dry, and they think, oh cool, I got all that lotion on. But you'll see that it does almost nothing in terms of getting germs off your body, right? So the viruses and bacteria are still there. Other people, of course, will try the water method, and they'll rinse their hands, and they'll feel a little bit of that lotion coming off. I'm like, okay, that was good. And again, 5 or 7 seconds is about the average for most people. They'll dry their hands. They'll be like, yay, this is the world's smallest paper towels. And then they'll be like, okay, great, now I got my hands clean. And then you'll see, no, in fact, they did a little bit, but not very much. Okay. And then you go through the whole process, and you kind of, so each table might have a different, so one table with paper towels, one table is just hand washing with water, one table gets soap maybe only for 5 seconds or 10 seconds, and then 30 seconds, and then a minute, and you might end up with 2 minutes, depending on how many groups you have in your class. So each table is doing one thing at a time. That helps a lot, because that way kids don't get as confused about what they're doing, because otherwise if you try to do one kid from one table doing one thing and another kid from another table doing the other thing, trying to do the same, it's going to get messed up. And you say, okay, this table, you guys do paper towels, and then you help them do the paper towels, and they're done. This table is washing hands with water, and we either get a bucket or you run them to your sink, and then you get them all done at the same time. They go back and sit down, and that way it helps you manage the kids a little bit. You all also, obviously, when you're doing your experiment, you want the kids to be able to do hypothesis, make a prediction. What do they think is going to be too much? Or what do they think is the right amount? Because of course you can wash your hands for an hour, but that's kind of wasted. In fact, sometimes you can be washing your hands too much, and it will actually help germs get into your skin, by roughing the skin, for instance. So we don't want to go too far in either direction. We want to do what's an appropriate amount. So in terms of washing hands, this is the way you want to show your kids. And you need to show them this up front, so they have an equal opportunity to get it right. The way they're going to do it is they're going to put their hands in the water, they're going to put some soap on it, and then usually you're using a sink instead of a bucket. And then what they immediately do is take their hands and put it under the water, the flowing water, and then do this, but then they're washing away all the soap. And the soap has not had a chance to do its job. So they've wasted it. You might as well not even use it. So what you really want them to do is get their hands wet. You want them to have the soap on it, and then they need to turn the water off or just ignore it. And then be like, the water's running. Don't worry, it's okay. Water can run for a few seconds. Keep your hands out of the water. Use the soap. Let the soap have the chance to get into the skin and do what it can. And then work from there. And yes, they're not going to be perfect. And you will be easy for you to show, even though some kids use the same amount of time, that it's more about how careful you're being, in terms of that. It's not how hard you scrub, for instance. It's where you scrub. And we'll see if I did a reasonable job here. Of course, I'm Russian, so I probably didn't do a great job. So if I look I got most of it, but you can see I've got some on my arm, and then if I look at the table, for instance, I can see where it's splashed. Okay, and I know you can't see that, I apologize, but it is a lot of fun to take the black light and go around to everyone's desk after they've done this and show them what their pencil looks like, what their desks look like. Because of course they're spreading the lotion as they go. They'll also have it on their face because they don't feel the lotion on their skin anymore, but it's being transferred around them. So it's a really good way to kind of show how things get transferred easily on surfaces. When you're done, if all your kids walk out being germaphobes, you've done the right thing, basically. They'll get over it eventually. 2 days later, they'll be back to picking their nose in front of you. So it's not a permanent change, but it will get them thinking about it. And it does help them think about the experimental process. Because what you do is once everyone's done, you have the kids come up as a group, you hold the light in front of them, they all put their hands up, and then the audience or the other students help get to judge how things are going. So you do a scale, maybe 1 through 5, 1 being horrible, 5 being super clean, and then you look to see who's got the highest score, and those would be your winners. Those are the ones who have the least amount of germs. So that's the first activity, which is you need a black light and some glow germ to talk about spreading germs and how viruses work in the body. Thank you so much.